Hello and welcome. Welcome to Wirecast in the Wild, and welcome to the funky studio kind of look thing here. It's looking pretty good. I'm Greg, and Matthew's there in the background as the remote producer today. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how's it going? Obviously, a bit of a different look today, as you can likely tell, but different graphics, different layout. I've taken us out of the water, so to speak. However, obviously, we still have some of the capabilities of ensuring that we're both on screen and doing what we can. So,
Yeah,
welcome.
I did like the fish tank, but certainly this is a more interesting look.
We can definitely bring it back. It might be something that pops up maybe as a surprise for certain times, but it's not my favorite. I don't like drowning.
Yeah. So just a quick, before we get into topics, sharing what we're doing. So we flipped it around, and the stream is actually happening from Matthew's studio environment over there today. So he's doing all of that part of it. And from my side, I'm a remote guest. So this is pretty new for me, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then we're currently streaming in 720, but we do plan to launch this obviously possibly on the channel as a 1080, obviously raising the quality up a little bit for that due to North American bit rates and bandwidth capabilities, but definitely seeing what we can do by increasing some of the video quality here. So hopefully you all enjoy it.
Yeah, 720 is even only just possible in Australia. 1080 would not be possible from here. It's physically impossible for me to do it. So good to take advantage of the partnership to do it in that way.
I know, well, for instance, it's something that I've been trying to play with a lot. So I'm going to say thank you for letting me try out some of the stream. You'll notice some of the timing possibly isn't the greatest at the moment. I'm still trying to gauge some of the timing for using animations with this. But yeah, pardon that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. Thunderbird saying I look a bit washed out.
You do. And you and I have gone back and forth between the last show and this show, trying to color balance and white balance. It's an ongoing battle. I think it's the camera. You're using a DSLR camera if I remember correctly. And
I'm just looking at myself over here. I've got a mirror. It's not.
Well, it is morning for you.
Yeah.
So you're a bit
and
pink.
I didn't sleep.
You're a bit pink.
I couldn't fall asleep last night. I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning, and finally got to sleep at 3. And then, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And it's 7:30 now. So thanks everyone for watching. Let's get into a couple of things. So you've got some topics on a nice little slide there.
I do. So we do have the topics obviously coming in. If we go back to obviously what those topics are, and if I had a slide without that timer on it, it'd be amazing, but I didn't plan that far ahead. We do have discussion points, including a couple things that were on the forum, obviously interviewing with Wirecast, going back and forth, output statistics. I think that was a conversation that you and I wanted to have about how they're currently being used, how to use them properly, and gauge your system and what it can do, as well as possibly other conversations, and then asking what everybody else does with Wirecast on their end. We're curious to know. So did you want to pull up possibly the interviews with Wirecast post that was on the
let's
forum?
do that.
Cool.
Let's do that.
Awesome. I'm going to pull you up. Would you be able to pull that up at all?
I thought you were pulling it up, but then
I can absolutely do that.
Look, I'll tell you what. You go and do that. You put me back up on the screen, and I'll talk.
You got it.
So this is an interesting discussion point, because obviously we're kind of doing an interview thing right now as we speak, and it's really different for me being the remote guest and still using Rendezvous. So I'm doing what John Morrison would normally do as a guest, or any of my other guests. And yeah, it's certainly different. I'll say that much. I feel the lack of control is something that I've got to get used to, but that's okay. But doing remote interviews in general. So the physical technologies, just starting there, first of all, we're using Rendezvous. And I've made a deliberate, conscious decision. I always want to use Rendezvous instead of using Skype or one of the other solutions. What's the reason for that? Well, firstly, it's something that I paid extra money for. I said I wanted this Rendezvous feature and I want to get value for money. Then when it didn't perform as well as I wanted initially, I said, well, I okay, something else. I played around with other options, but I've come back to it because I've come to a simple realization. If not enough people are using it, people won't find bugs and they won't get fixed. So that's why I use Rendezvous, and I want to stick with it for the moment. But it's also got some really good advantages as well as a technology, because I can be sitting there. You've got individual inputs within Wirecast for each of the guests. You can do that with Skype as well. But I just feel you have a little bit more control when you're using Rendezvous. So now that I've gone and blabbed a little bit, Matthew, you've got a slide to put up.
I absolutely do. So this is currently Telestream's post recently done by Robert. He's looking to do some interviews with Wirecast right now. Clearly, there's been a bit of conversation back and forth with this, talking about exactly that, Rendezvous as a solution. Jens has made a comment, you've made a comment in here about this, and I think even I've done something for this. It's something that you and I clearly see as something that should be a viable thing. As case in point, we're doing that at the moment, on the fly, one would say.
Yeah.
Now,
But it's interesting. Can I just interrupt? It's interesting
Yes.
looking at the background there right now, where we've got that A/B template shot in the background. But the whole concept of using templates, it's a great idea, but like Rendezvous, still a little bit immature. There's times when, I'll give you an example. Let's talk about midway through a show, and let's talk about not an interview, but bringing in an unplanned or unforecasted guest. And I want to bring in, I don't know, Chris Hope. Let's say he's sitting there in the chat right now. And to get him in, getting him onto the Rendezvous dashboard, nice and super easy. And using templates to go and bring people in, it's always challenging, because as soon as you add him into one of those placeholders, you've got to remember a whole heap of things. So you need to go and turn off the audio for that guest in that placeholder, assuming you've got a separate audio layer, and you've got to go and add that person into the audio layer as well and turn off the video there, because otherwise when you switch shots, they're going to stop talking all of a sudden. That's one of the big challenges that I see, is the whole templating system.
No, I completely agree with you on this one here. The templating right now, you and I have had lengthy conversations inside the show, outside the show, and with some of the people obviously at Telestream. There's a big demand for it. Creating that basic template and being able to produce a show easily and effectively ad hoc. Obviously, we're doing this when we practice back and forth. In fact, Telestream today just did a live stream on how to practice and how to set things up and what you want to do in preparation with your guests. Sometimes that's not always possible. They mentioned it on their show today, and they were talking about how sometimes there's last minute hiccups. Bandwidth might not be the greatest. And when you have to do these things right off the bat, that's when understanding the technology the best helps. So like you had said, creating those templates and activating one and making sure you're remembering all the steps that you need to do in order to get that up and running is extremely valuable, and you need to have that capacity. Practice, essentially. And yeah.
And the other thing also, I've got something when I'm bringing guests into my regular show, and Matt, if you want to bring up the my laptop.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is something that I share with all of my guests every single time they join the show for the regular Oz by Drone show that I do. And this is all of the essential information, the when and the how, talking about how you're actually joining, talking about Rendezvous and all of that kind of stuff. Web browser, computer and Android, how you're going to do it. And I've got a test link there. But in addition, I've also got another WebRTC conference test link that I provide to them as well, so they can test without me being around. Then we go into talking about iOS, so using Wirecast Go. And Wirecast Go it's good when it works. There's some challenges around with it as well. But I'll come back to that in a minute. And then finally do a test call with me, and then the tips and tricks about use headphones to prevent audio and echo feedback kind of things. When you've got a remote guest who may not be a regular video guy, they may not be used to that. Now, I know you use your nice little in-ear headphones, which is good for the people who've got the toys and the tricks and all of those kind of things. But if you don't, something like that, or your Apple headphones, whatever, all of those things are absolutely essential.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I still do technically have like the big ears and whatnot for that. It's just when I'm doing a show like this, I like to make sure that I'm minimizing the headspace for this. Get me up close to the top. There's no combating thing. And they're actually really good quality. It's fun walking on
Yeah.
on public transit with them sometimes and being like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Oh, your white iPad, iOS based ones. Okay, you go
Yeah.
ahead."
So let me just finish with that. I want to
Sure.
quickly finish on the topic of the iOS app. Wirecast Go, great idea. It's needed because on the Apple environment, using native web browser, WebRTC stuff doesn't work so well. And that's just because of the way Apple locks all of its stuff down. So the challenge is then you go and use Wirecast Go, but sometimes when you bring the guest in at first, it's all pixelated and looks like some weird test pattern almost. So the only way to solve that is to get out of the app and to get back into the app. So if your remote guest is having problems, just quit it and restart it. And one other thing I'd suggest as well, some phones, the iPhone X in particular, is challenging with Wirecast Go. It doesn't work so well on a regular basis. So if your guest is using an iPhone X, it may very well not work. It's still been a challenge for a long time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a ton of different solutions, and the problem with a lot of the video, with doing this basically for anybody really, is you have very little control over your guest. One of the things I remember seeing back when I was watching twit.tv a lot was anybody that was a regular person on the show was actually sent a presenter mic, proper earphones, and I think a C920 they were sending to people just to be sure that, hey, they could do everything they could to make sure that their guests had the best quality equipment to use. And it wasn't due to anything that the show was doing that was a problem with the quality. So the only thing that would really go wrong was something like, oh, Skype would go down, or the bandwidth was an issue and it wasn't high enough. But they were at least diligent in that factor.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly pause and go off script. It's not like me to do that, is it?
Never.
Here's an interesting thing. You mentioned before that I looked washed out, and that was mentioned in the chat room before. I'm looking at my native camera before it goes to you, and I'm looking more like what I know I am. So, but it's coming back to me in the rendezvous window as washed out. Interesting discussion point.
Rendezvous as a whole, I think, is a very interesting discussion point. Now, I don't know if the rendezvous window actually was high enough quality to see my kind of like eyes going around, but yes, there is a lot of quality degradation in Rendezvous at the moment. It's using WebRTC, so it's obviously bound by limitations. Now, I've done a post recently of, hey, can we get some love on that maybe? Because the quality coming back on a local network was suboptimal. And obviously we did get a response saying, yes, something is happening. Yes, it's taken a look at, because clearly it's something that has to, if it's going to be on par with other solutions. I myself use Skype a lot to do my interview style. So the downside there obviously is that you have that hard embedded logo on an NDI output signal. But for me, I blame Skype for that. Skype's trying to position itself as a professional tool. It should not be doing that.
Yeah, certainly their hardware solution where they've got a different Skype in box and those kind of things, really nice tools. And in fact, I know that Andrew used to use those for his regular Wirecast content. Rendezvous, I would love it if more people could use it. Sorry to be really blunt, but I know it's troublesome. But if you don't use it, you don't get the bugs reported. And if you don't get the bugs reported, they don't get fixed. I think by doing a lot of the stuff that myself, not trying to say it's all me that's fixing it, but I think by reporting all of this, we brought a lot of attention to it. And the audio challenges with Rendezvous, like I said before, you have to be careful about where you put your audio when you bring your guest in and for the all of that kind of stuff. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Sorry, I just happened to notice a decent comment, and I had to post it up on.
What was it? I missed it.
It was the Mike Roche. I'm Canadian. Sorry, I instantly do the A at the end of that. Sorry, Mike. Mentioning it's wintertime in Australia. Of course, Greg looks white.
We don't have snow in Sydney.
No.
But seriously, I look at myself over here on the raw camera and I look pink. But you were talking about the video quality. So I get it in terms of resolution.
Yeah.
But changing the color space?
So the color space is your camera coming in. And I think you and I have done some back and forth testing on
Yeah,
that.
but hang on. I'm looking at my camera coming in.
Yep.
And the way I'm routing this video today, I've got it going into Wirecast and from there across to Rendezvous.
I'd be very curious to see a photo side by side and perhaps a screenshot on your end. And maybe afterwards you can post the link to that photo in the description of this video.
Yeah.
But it'd be very curious to know the difference there. Because color shouldn't really change that much. As soon as it goes in, it goes in.
It's big.
You look like Zoidberg without his shell. No offense.
Over here on the other one, I look like a red lobster.
That's that's about the same.
But that is, well, yeah, okay. It could be my camera. Anyway, enough. It's a different lobster.
It's a lobster of a different color. Let's just say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The whole shot is slightly furry. Yeah.
Yes,
and that's because
that's the quality.
Yeah. So we're sending the shot from Australia as a 1080p shot across to your place over there, and it is what it is.
I have bandwidth to spare. In fact, I had to downgrade this stream to 720 because of other technical things. But the quality coming from this side isn't the problem. It's the resolution that's actually coming from Australia through Rendezvous. This is something that we have tried to increase over the last little bit, but because we want to maintain using Wirecast technologies and Telestream technologies as much as we can for the show, it's a bit blurry.
Okay.
It is what it is.
So anyway, let's move on. We've got the second topic on our list for today.
Yep. Output statistics.
So let me go and do some magic on my screen.
Or actually, I believe our next topic was output statistics, which I think was a big point of yours and how it plays a part in what you do, because you do a lot of reporting back to Telestream about usage, about drop frames, about views as well, because it shows YouTube views if you have the YouTube being sent all of the stuff from Wirecast. So did you want to play on that and some of the stuff that you've noticed?
Yeah, so one of the challenges right now is I'm trying to turn on output statistics, and because I'm not actually streaming from this computer, I don't have that view on in front of me. So maybe if I start recording, this is actually an interesting point. Can you bring up my computer?
I absolutely can. It is currently up, but I see the website right now.
Then I might need to click that so we can do that. Where's that window again? Window, output statistics. So right now I've got an output statistics window, which is totally blank. Now I'm not streaming using Wirecast at the moment, but I am using the virtual camera, and I want to know how the system is performing using the virtual camera. I have no way of telling how it's performing because it's totally black there. So to get some actual metrics, I've got to go and fudge some recording. So I'll record to disk, and I'll just leave the default there. And I'll turn that on. Window, output statistics. And that seems to be working really well. I didn't plan this. I swear it. Are you still there?
Yes, I am. However, I had the mic muted. While you're setting that up, I'm going to go through what I'm seeing on my end, which is kind of a similar aspect of you. So I am streaming from this machine. However, what I'm doing is I'm outputting through the Blackmagic interface. So at the moment, I'm going to actually drag Wirecast over to this window here, and you'll see my CPU is kind of hammered because I'm doing a lot of things on it. So clearly, I'm sending out. But what I've done is I've actually said on DeckLink, I'm outputting my resolution to my AJA helos. I've got two of them. One's recording, one's streaming because they're both doing 1080p 60. My CPU level is super high because of other reasons. But if I go and I look at my output statistics, I see nothing because I'm not doing streaming or recording. Now, it's very interesting that I wouldn't have that information available. Even when I have the output, I have an output set to do our server on our channel on this exact stream. So if we did want to have a proper like backup stream as well, then what we can do is like I can click a single button here and it'll send to the backup in case things go wrong on the helos. It's a safety measure that I make, but at least it's there. If that information is there, I should have that stats. I should be able to see current viewers. I should be able to see all that information.
So as this is coming back over Rendezvous, unfortunately, I can't see that with clarity.
So your screen's up at the moment, by the way.
Yeah. So do you want to put your one back up
Sure.
in the background?
Yep.
I'm just trying to have a look at. Do you actually have a line there, a line graph, or no?
I have absolutely nothing. It's completely grayed out. There is no CPU usage. There's no memory usage. There's nothing.
Okay.
Now, if I were to select and say go start live streaming, I'd be a bit fretful because the CPU is currently so high, but we can try it. Who knows?
Let's not do that. Let's not do that. But this is really, really frustrating. So on my machine, and I'll go back to my Wirecast screen right now, output statistics, I can't get this to work at all. And I don't know if this is a new bug that we've magically come across today. The only thing that I've done differently or unusual today is that I've started the virtual camera and then I started disk recording. Now let me go and restart that disk record. I didn't plan it. I've never seen this before. So another challenging.
That's new to me as well. I've never seen it with a window. The window is always populated for me. So that's really bizarre. That's super strange. That wasn't planned.
Okay. So if I did have statistics here, I have spoken about it a little bit before, but where do you start to look when things are not going as well as you can expect? In Australia, because we are bandwidth constrained, the first places I look when I've got a bandwidth problem is going to be the frame rate. Am I sending 30 frames per second? And if not, why not? Then I'm going to have a look at the RTMP queue size. If the queue is too big, and then all of a sudden I can't send my 30 frames per second because there's a network issue, that's going to confirm it 100%. Those are the two places where I start to look in Australia. If I was looking at something else, am I CPU bound? I'd be having a look at CPU numbers. And also I correlate those things together and I say, at the time that there was a CPU spike, did I see the RTMP queue go up? So therefore it's not network related and it's the grunt of the machine that I'm using rather than the network. So a really helpful tool. And this happened recently with Ken Heron's live stream. So he had a problem where, and let's actually unpack this one. Matt, I'd be curious on your comments.
Sure.
So Ken has a supercomputer, for lack of a better description. He laid out insane amounts of money because he said, you know what, my Wirecast show has looked really bad for a long time. I'm going to make it so that it's not the computer's fault. Okay, so he laid out a large amount of money, got the computer. This last week just passed, he did his show as normal, and he uses VLC playing to a monitor, and he recaptures the VLC input.
Okay.
This is another topic for another day. I would love to be able to get a better playback interface within Wirecast, but
playlists, yes, video playlists. Yeah, you brought this up during a conversation that I think we both had with Telestream and I agree with you. In fact, it was one of the things that even Telestream was like, yeah, that does sound like it'd be valuable. I know just for production of events, that would be amazing to have a better version of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But let's go back to the challenge, right?
Sure.
So his show, his guests, everything was 100% perfect. He did his normal show intro. It all looked really good. And then every time he played videos, it was looking good on his VLC window locally, but Wirecast, it was stuttering.
Using screen capture is a bit of a finicky thing. I have seen this in other software, and I've seen this in Wirecast. Capturing one screen, that's a lot of CPU to do on that because you're basically re-rendering the GPU's content to it. Now,
and I want to quickly talk on that topic. You just mentioned one screen versus one window. Something that I've seen is if you capture a window, the CPU load is higher than if you capture an entire monitor.
yes, it is. Because
Significantly higher.
it absolutely is. Because if you think about it, you're then asking the operating system that is rendering that out and sending it to the GPU, you're basically interrupting it between there because you're capturing a section of the display that can have windows over top of it, right? So you're taking that and you're converting that into a video signal, and then you're also tracking that every frame, right? So if you're only saying, give me the output of what the GPU has, that's a lot easier to do than just great, before you send it to the CPU, I want you to take this window and I want you to crop it out here. And if it's moving, I want you to take whatever frame it's on in that next position. Now, I'm not that level of developer. I can't really speak on it.
Sure.
But it's not about the quantity of pixels. It's how it's being captured, I think, at that point.
So let's quickly talk about that. The interesting thing is that Ken has used this same methodology of running his show every week. It's the same template document. He does it week after week after week. With that information, what would the first thing that you looked at if you were trying to troubleshoot it live on air? Because I'm watching Ken's show on my iPhone in the middle of a supermarket, talking in chat and then Skyping with him and, troubleshooting it. What would you look at? I'll tell you what and afterwards I'll tell you what I think it is, and we'll see if you think I'm right.
Sure. So now I want to be clear here. This is on a Mac or PC?
PC.
Okay. And the reason why he's using VLC is purely because the videos are there, or why is he doing it through that?
Because he has a large collection of videos and he wants to be able to easily play them and sort through them without having a shot for each video.
Gotcha. So a few solutions I would look at for instant solution. Obviously, being on Windows, you have VLC's NDI out, which you'd be able to bring in and play. On Windows, not on a Mac. We've had that conversation. Solution more longer term, I would look at offloading those videos onto another piece of hardware, be it an older computer, be it something, and then bring it in as a capture device or NDI over a network, or even something like a cheap 60i Blackmagic device that you'd be able to capture it over USB-C or Thunderbolt, just to take that load of playing VLC content, which can be a bit taking up CPU. If it's 4K, if it's 1080p 60 or higher, you're taking that off that computer and you're putting it on something else and having that control. That's what I do.
Okay. I'm going to tell you what actually did happen and why I think it fixed it. So the ultimate solution was simple. Restart Wirecast. That's all that we did. The video in YouTube, it automatically joined the two pieces together, so that was all happy. But in restarting Wirecast, here's what I think happened. Ken's regular startup sequence, he goes and reboots the computer as, it's one of the things that I always do before doing a broadcast. And I've told Ken you should do that as well. I think he may have, before starting Wirecast, been using another application, and the other application was doing GPU-related activities. So what I think has happened, and this is a guess, is that application had a lock on the GPU. He then started Wirecast, and it was doing its screen capturing thing, and then he closed that application, which had a hold on the GPU. The screen capture, which was already active, therefore couldn't get the lock because it was already active. This is a guess only, but only thing that makes sense because nothing else changed.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to know what else was running on the machine because there really
At
isn't
that
a.
time, nothing. At that time, nothing, right? So he had Wirecast, he had VLC, he might have had a web browser window looking at chat and those kind of things. But it's the same thing that he runs every week. The only thing that we can fathom that was potentially different was doing some of his pre-show video processing, which was very GPU intensive. He finished that work, but Wirecast, I think, was started before he shut that application.
Interesting. And that Wirecast wouldn't, or technically it's Windows that should be, it's Windows that should just release the CPU cycles in order to have other applications.
But here's the question. So the capture window is not shut down on non-live.
Correct.
So therefore, it's constantly running even when the video shot is not live. So therefore, it's not using the GPU if the GPU was locked at the time. There's a little bit of speculation in here, but it's the only thing that makes sense.
That is
to me.
Truly bizarre. I don't have a solution for it right away. That is super interesting. Yeah.
Okay, we've totally gone off our pre-planned list of topics to talk about, but that's okay.
That's okay. Well, this is still statistics and how to use statistics. I can't talk at the moment. Statistics, but yes. Yeah. No, I think there's definitely stuff there, and again, it's something that's open for debate and open for conversation down below. Yeah, for sure.
And the last thing I'll quickly say is that when Ken and I spoke on Skype, I said, open the statistics window. He didn't know how to do that, and he's in the middle of his show, and he's a creative person who's so he was in no mood for me to explain to him how to open statistics, especially when I didn't have a computer in front of me and couldn't remember the exact menu item. Yeah. So Reboot Wirecast seemed to work.
For anybody who's wanting to know, if you do want to do this, because we didn't actually show it, underneath your output menu, that's the fourth item down, it's show recordings. Sorry, not show recordings.
Output statistics.
Show statistics.
Yes.
Is it output statistics for you? Because it says show statistics for me.
Let me do it. It's show statistics. You're correct.
Correct. So just below your canvas size and selecting the canvas size, there's an option for showing statistics. And this is a very good one. I absolutely can do that. Yes.
So there it is. As I mentioned before, though, selecting it for whatever unknown reason brings up a black box. We've got a black box recorder inside Wirecast. No, I don't know. Oh, did you see that?
It did. You were still technically live when that happened. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's show the people what they need.
So here is output statistics. It wasn't working before. It just decided to start working. So now I can start having a look at CPU usage. And I can bring up my bitrate for my disk recording.
Now you'll need to make that a little bit bigger for the people at home.
I'd love to do that. I'd love absolutely to do that. So I've turned those things on. How does it look to you, Matthew?
All we can see is a black screen with the kind of vertical lines at the top going from it. So
that's all I can see as well.
Okay. And are you actually recording?
Let me go over there. Window. Think. Well, let's do that.
So you're not actually doing anything, which means that it's not recording and providing you statistics, though. So now
that's okay.
Now when you switch back, yeah.
Okay, we've got numbers, and again, it's interesting. It's exactly the same as what we did earlier in the show. Anyway, it is what it is. So the different lines that we've got, quickly talking about them, bitrate. I generally use a codec that's going to give me around 1.25 megabits per second. That's me. I do that because that's what we need to deal with for the internet. Frame rate, 30 frames per second should be a solid line if that's what you're configured at. If you see it dipping, have a look at what else is happening at the same time. Do you see CPU usage spiking? In this case, no, nothing significant there. Memory usage, I generally don't turn it on. Wirecast at the moment doesn't seem to have any significant memory leaks or challenges, so I haven't.
Well, it does longer term, and I think that's a bit of a conversation on our next topic.
Okay. But anyway, the one thing that's missing there is RTMP queue size, and it's not there because it's not actually RTMP streaming.
You're not streaming.
That's the other one that's a big one to look at.
Yeah.
So next topic.
So next topic, there was a comment a little while ago about wanting to set up a 24-hour live stream. So what I'm going to do, so the topic was done by Goop de Loop Sullivan. I am a terrible person for names. Please do not judge me by that. Who's been running Wirecast to do a bunch of stuff, including a 24-hour stream. So this is actually something that plays off my heartstrings because it was something that I set up a little while ago, and I did some testing in Wirecast, did long-term streaming, did short-term streaming testing, and I'm actually running, if anybody knows, the Free Code Camp is a website that you can go to learn code, completely free, you'd think based on the name, and their live chat and their live music feed is something that's actually running out of this office right now. For a good 6 months, it was running on Wirecast, but I found that that system would just build up and 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 then crash and build up and build up and build up and build up and build up, crash. So there was definitely something. It was just that the system was overloaded. I was running it off of an ASUS machine. Decent.
No, I mean right now.
What do you mean? Right now.
I disappeared and it looked like Rendezvous disconnected and reconnected.
No.
And it was literally, ironically, just seconds after I said, Peter Demester asked, "Hey, it's looking really good today. Maybe no one's watching Netflix, etc. this early." And I replied, "Peter, it's because we're streaming out of Canada. Telstra's out of the loop." So that's, and then at that exact moment, I mentioned Telstra and I lost it.
So on my end, it was there was no hiccup on my end because I wasn't really looking at your feed. So I didn't see the window if you dropped in or out, but you're coming
But I'm
through.
not question marked, so that's
You're not
weird.
because you weren't live. You were actually on a different slide. So,
Okay.
nonetheless, essentially to go back to it, I have switched to using OBS for this. Shame on me, I know. But with OBS, I can run for months on end without any issue. Wirecast is like a few days. I'd have to reset it. Go to another machine, bring up the stream, shut down, restart, bring the old one back up again. And like we're talking, I've been just doing this on a low-powered machine for months now. I think the current stream is sitting at since February. It's been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's just a web view and a live playlist. But I don't think Wirecast is the right solution for this, just because I think over longer periods of time, there can be issues. And for such a simple thing, you're just doing a single background or an overlay and capturing system audio. And in most cases, that's just something like Foobar 2000 and just playing music randomly.
Okay.
So a $500 or $1,000 piece of software to do a 24-hour live stream of just music, probably a bit overkill. And you're not taking advantage of all the things that you should be for that. Now, Jens did jump in here and say, hey, if you're just doing this, you might want to take a look at doing Synergy Air. As well, there's actually third-party servers that can also do this for you, where it's basically just a box that's sitting in a cloud somewhere, and it's just live encoding. And that's a service that you can purchase for, I think it's $100 a month, $150 a month of just running a live 24/7 thing. Yeah.
And by the way, you mentioned $500 piece of software. Something interesting, just a side topic, Wirecast 1, I didn't know about it. I missed the launch of it or something, but I came across it the other day. Have you had a look much at the differences in the specs?
I've had a little bit of a look. I haven't been able to test that too much just yet. It's on my, I'm going to say hit list of wanting to take a look at, but at the moment, Wirecast does its job. I know that what they're doing is they're trying to target some of the gamers that are out there that are using obviously Streamlabs OBS that has come out. It's a small, like just everything's built in. You don't leave that application to do titles and stuff. So I think that's their target market. They want to have that migration from the free software to professional software to pro software, right? So it's just bridging a gap.
Yeah, I think it's a good and helpful thing for them to start doing. The challenge is when you do have a look at the free software stuff and the Streamlabs integration, for example, that's one big gap that's going to prevent you from getting those free software people from paying some extra money. I personally think if you added the stream labels and integration, number one, number two, one rendezvous guest, one remote guest rather than two. So I know that on the studio version, you've got two guests. You've got 0 on the Wirecast one version of the app. And if I have a look at a lot of the people who stream, they are starting to bring in guests now.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more interesting and more popular. And I've passed this as a feature suggestion onto Telestream. I hope they take notice of it and consider adding one guest into that version.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's something that they're examining. But from what I'm guessing and a bit of conversations that I've had, things like NDI was a big. Do we add it? Because with that, they can then add a ton of different inputs, which we're trying not to say. So I think that might fall into that realm.
And the other thing as well, if you're running that version of software and if you do add Rendezvous, what is the overhead and support cost to support that in the current version? Because they're not likely to be the kind of person who's going to pay for support on top. And can you actually afford to support it in its current form?
Yeah. Yeah. That's essentially what it comes down to. So next topic quickly here was somebody posted online. Did you know about this one? The needing a recommendation for a multi-capture card?
No, I haven't gone through it in much detail, but launch.
Sure. So so Scott Newman had posted something about how he's doing capture for, I believe it's Boy Scouts. Yeah, Boy Scouts. And he's wanting some suggestions because he's doing a bunch of webcams, USB webcams, to do this live feed out. And based upon what I'm seeing with the specifications for the computer should be able to handle that. And it's surprising that I think what's ending up happening is the USB buses are just getting overloaded. And so his first idea was, hey, let's get a couple of USB buses to have a direct feed to that. But luckily, Jen's chimed in here with like, hey, listen, if you're doing that much video in, you might want to look to having something like a captured card, like a Blackmagic device or an AJA device, and having it so that you can bring those in. There's been suggestions from Craig here saying, have you tried lower resolutions or changing that aspect of it, which also might help. But I think because he's funding this out of his own pocket, as he's saying here, price-wise and getting things like refined might be a bit difficult and a little longer term. What are your thoughts? What would you say? He's using currently like Microsoft LifeCam Studios and other just very low-cost webcams.
How many cameras does he want in?
He's currently doing, when I connect 3 or more web cameras, I struggle and get an error message that crops up after a few minutes, generally while switching shots.
And the error message, does he say what it is?
Wirecast is unable to start the USB device Microsoft LifeCam Studio. Trademark.
Okay. Look, I've recently ordered something new, which is a Elgato CamLink 4K. I picked that for me because I struggle sometimes using the Blackmagic device with drivers. Literally this morning, as we prepared to do some stuff today, Blackmagic said it wanted to update drivers and the camera was physically inaccessible. I don't know why, and I had to reboot it a couple of times and eventually things came to life. And you've made comment as I was troubleshooting that the driver issues with Blackmagic is not uncommon.
Yeah, I used to run into that all the time.
And you don't use that now, and you instead use...
So I use a couple of different things for my content. I do still have the shuttles, the USB shuttle, the Thunderbolt shuttle, but they sit on a shelf collecting dust because of exactly what you're saying. If you knock the Thunderbolt cable, gone. The USB one was extremely hard to work with. Even sending the proper 60i signal in, I had to basically buy a DAC 70, a data video DAC 70, which, side note, if you're in video production, go buy yourself a data video DAC 70. Those things are gold. I don't regret the multiple ones that I have. But the USB one and the Thunderbolt shuttles were terrible. And I knew this going in. I have since also upgraded the mini recorders. I have 4 Blackmagic mini recorders, which I would use to do 2 different rooms, 2 different video feeds in on 2 different machines. And again, I would have issues with them. The cable was very precious, to say the least. And so since then, I've actually upgraded. I'm now running a Decklink Duo, again from Blackmagic, which lets me get video in from camcorders, as well as does a pass-through out or an output out. Again, let me reiterate that. It lets me do a pass-through out, or I can output directly to it, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm actually outputting through Blackmagic into an AJA Helo from Wirecast. So Wirecast is embedding everything, including the audio that we're mixing down, passing it through the Blackmagic into the AJA.
I'm glad I asked. And if you've got a checkbook, that would be a really nice way to do it.
Yes. Anyway, so, but yeah, I'll go on a tirade. The other thing I have is an Elgato. So I have the 60S, whatever the 60GS, whatever the thing is over there, that I'm using as a mobile thing.
And I was going to buy that exact model, but I did some reading and research, and the consensus was that was no good on a Mac with Wirecast. So I said to myself, in that case, what am I going to use? And I went to the Camlink. Why? Because the Camlink, as a USB device, comes into your computer and pretends to be a webcam. So it just pops up in the operating system as a webcam straight away.
Yeah, which is good. Now, that reminds me, there is another person that was doing a Blackmagic web presenter in the forums as well that was having some issues with that. Sometimes they show up for applications, sometimes they don't. But I'm going to be very curious to see how this new capture device works for you. We should be hopefully finding out next week.
When I ordered it, the original vendor, I won't mention who it is, who said they had stock, all of a sudden couldn't find their last one, and they cancelled the listing. And then I said, okay, they've refunded me my money. That's fine. They've been honest about it. And then I saw them relisted at a higher price.
Oh, interesting.
So I did write back to them, and they claimed, oops, I did it again, kind of thing. And it was some automation from some back end that talked to eBay and whatever. Gotcha. And then they said it was end of life. They said it was an end of life device, which I thought was interesting because it's relatively new, the 4K version from Elgato. They used to have the non-4K version. So
that's really weird. Yeah.
So anyway, but as it turns out, between the time when I originally ordered it and I ordered it again, another vendor dropped their price. So I've actually got a cheaper unit anyway. So happy days.
Well, there you go. Cool. Yeah, I'm very curious to know how that's going to turn out. Capture cards I've had a bunch here. Some of them have failed, some of them have not. It's a hit and miss, really, and what's going to work with a Mac and what's going to work best with a PC and resolutions. So we'll see how well this turns out.
But interestingly, my plan was not originally to use it with the camera. My plan was to use it with computer output from this Mac or from that Mac going this way. Either way, computer to computer capture.
I'd be curious to know whether or not it might be better to do the opposite, because I know your plan was to have so that the camera is one and your computer is another input. But we should see about doing it so that the shuttle, because your camera, the computer can always be set to a static value out. That might be a better option for you through the shuttle.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Okay, next on the hit list.
So next, really on the hit list is asking what everybody else is doing. How are people using Wirecast? What are you planning to do with it? What type of stuff are you currently doing? And where do you see yourself using it in the future? Kind of a call to action.
Yeah. Just talking about people that are using it. Let's talk about the different market segments, and it'll maybe give someone some ideas as well. The first one is the kind of the Oz by Drone show that I do, that Ken does his show, which is the combination of talk show plus video clips. Really simple use case. The only thing that I do different to that is the use of virtual studios. Wirecast for that kind of mix works, but the things that I would love it to do, and I'm just going to hang them out there again, templates, which we've spoken about this morning. Number 2, playlist inside Wirecast so that I don't have to use an external play and capture using VLC. Number 3 would be audio related, fix some of the audio challenges that we've mentioned before, particularly the faders on. I'll actually hold it up if I can. It's got a short cable here, so I don't want to hold it too much. This is a console that I use when I'm using Wirecast, and if you change the shots on the screen, all of a sudden which fader is allocated to which shot changes around. So that's really frustrating. Fixing things like that. The ability to mark some shots as non-audio shots if you know that there is no audio input and you never want to use it. I don't want to see it appear on my board. So things like that, those are some of the things that I'd love for me personally. And I've got one more, pardon me, I've got one more, which is projective transformation. Ooh, I've got him thinking. I've stumped him.
Projective transformation.
Ooh, I'm going to put something on my screen. Just give me a moment.
That definitely has me thinking of what that could possibly. Like, I do some work with marketing experiential, and there's projection mapping, but nothing like that. You're not thinking like that, are you?
Projection mapping, probably. I've got it on my computer screen at the moment.
Yep, you're live.
So this is where I want to use this virtual studio instead of the one that I'm using right now for my regular show. The challenge is that Wirecast, I would love to be able to say, here's a input and I want to map it to these 4 corners of that coordinate space and have it automatically do the rest of it for me. Unfortunately, it doesn't do that. The way Wirecast works is you've got a center point and you can rotate in X, Y, and Z. So what I would love is a way of getting it to automatically be able to drag it to the corners in simple terms. Or do the math, input the coordinates to the corners. So just out of interest, I started doing some work to try and type in the coordinates and see if I could work out the math to get from corners to angles. And I was looking at all sorts of lecture notes and robotics and perception and vanishing points and all of this other stuff. But yeah, there you go.
So yeah, no, I can definitely see where that'd be valuable. I guess in my terms for something like projection mapping, this would be similar to keystoning, where you're taking, or you can take up the base 4 corners, and then you can warp those to those different positions. Advanced systems let you create grids then and do things like warping around a bend. So, for instance, some of the content that you have there might be perspective differences here. You might be able to bend something around a pole. That's a bit advanced. Don't get me wrong. That's like really far out there.
And that's something that Virtual Setworks, the people who made that template, they said they want that in Wirecast.
Yeah. Oh, I can clearly see why it'd be a valuable thing for them.
And they also commented that it's available in other products that they work with.
Yes.
Subtle hint, Telestream, we'd love you to keep up with the Joneses.
Yes. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the virtual sets. I'll be honest, and I know you do it for your stuff. It's a personal preference. And I know even with this current setup that I have right now, if you look behind you, Greg, check out behind you. Do you see what you see? It's it's
I see a
it's
green wall.
it's it's actually a another camera that I have set up, and it's something to do with like live backgrounds and stuff like that. Um, and I think it's a very personal preference thing to do different
Yeah.
things. Virtual
Look,
sets is one thing. I don't know if I don't think I'd ever use a virtual set,
yeah. Look, to be honest, the virtual set that I'm using at the moment, it was the freebie one that comes with Wirecast Pro. It
and
works,
it
but
works.
it's. I don't like it though. Just like you, the one that I put on my screen a couple of moments ago,
Yep.
I like the look of that, and I want to use it. You can put things in the windows out the back,
You can have a
and
complete scene out the back, or probably a video
you
playing.
can, you can, you can have some motion out the back. I would love to use that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No,
the
that
reality
completely makes
is, the
sense.
reasons why I can't use it, we don't have that transformation of the four corners to be able to put stuff in there. Second reason why, how many TV screens do you see there?
TV screens.
Yeah, or monitors.
I currently see four, but you could probably do a bunch because the background is a window that each one of those
Well,
squares can also be.
let's just talk about the TV screeny things. And the challenge
You're going to be
is that
talking about the templates, right?
Wirecast supports how many inputs in templates?
At the moment, three.
So they're selling this virtual set, which has got 4 TV screens, which you want to put content into there, but the application only supports 3 template placeholders.
Having that much content be brought in, like it really, I'd be curious to know like what you're going to be bringing in for having all four of those be really filled out, though.
Not necessarily that I am going to do that every time, but I want to. Sometimes it might be a static image on one of those, or whatever it is that I'm going to do. I don't know. But if you're going to sell this as a set pack and then not be able to use it, that might be a bit of a concern.
Yeah,
And
I
by the
could see
way,
that.
this particular virtual studio has a desk that also has another small TV screen on the front of the desk.
Yeah,
So
generally for like logos or looping
what
video,
it
generally.
actually looks like a TV screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I
But
don't disagree. But yeah, so ways that was ways you're using it. Ways I'm currently using it. Any of my live events that are being streamed, I generally do conferences, educational stuff. Not a lot of major TV level stuff, but anything educational. A lot of meetups and community groups that are educational based. If I'm doing a live stream for that and using live graphics, that's when I'm pulling people in. I've got a basic standard setup for that. But what I'm trying to really get into is role playing and DM streaming, as well as obviously remote access and likely doing some remote broadcasting for people where I'm not on screen and I'm only handling the tech side of things instead of doing it as a part of the show. Now, you can see that there's definitely been some timing issues that I've had here, both with just doing this, which it is always the case when you're self-producing, and actually having buttons do take as well, but that's another story. That's how I'm using it, but I definitely am curious to know how other people are.
yeah. Well, we're coming up on the end of our 1 hour kind of preferred time slot. So rather than stretching any further, if there's nothing else from you, just a quick reminder of the call to action, which is
We want you to let us know how you're using the software. How are you using it right now? How do you want to use it? And what we'll do is next week we'll see about having a conversation and find out how people are using it, and possibly any way that we can either help or use that information ourselves. Because quite frankly, I like stealing other people's ideas sometimes and embedding them into my own, giving
yeah,
credit.
come to us with some questions. Look, I don't pretend to be I know everything about Wirecast, but I've learnt the application, and as a general computer guy, you've put the word technology leader. I've worked in IT and technology all my life, and I say that literally before I'd left school. I already had a bulletin board service with 30,000 subscribers. So, technology is what I do, and I hope that I can help. And certainly with Matthew alongside, he's had a lot of experience in some of the other video production aspects as well. Anyway.
Awesome. Yeah. Comment down below. Let us know what you think. And as always, enjoy and teach other people things. My big thing is I want everybody to teach other people, because if we all teach everything to everybody else, we're all going to have a good time. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.